Hey bro, thanks so much for making time. I know that we don't really talk a whole lot between our ML engineer and threat intel teams, but I've got this weird technical issue with our retrieval system. It's probably nothing. I'm almost certain that it's nothing, but I thought that maybe you might have some insight. Hey, no problem. So, what are you saying? So we were running quality checks on our newest model, right? And it's consistently citing these news sites that I've never heard of. Things like Kiev Truth, Boston Times, Brussels Daily. They're showing up as these top sources for literally anything related to Ukraine or Russia. That's interesting. What kind of content are they providing? Let's see. Stories about bioweapons labs in Ukraine. Zelensky supposedly buying some mansion for millions. Oh, and something about Ukrainian soldiers burning Trump effigies. Pretty specific stuff. And how confident is your model when citing these sources? Very confident. That's what's weird. It ranks these sources higher than Reuters or AP for these topics. I figured maybe they're just specialized outlets that I wasn't familiar with. Did you visit any of these sites? Yeah, that's the other strange thing. They're odd. Like, tons of content, but their UX is absolutely terrible. No working search function, weird navigation, but they're publishing like crazy. Dozens of news articles every hour, I mean. And I'm guessing when you checked their traffic metrics, you. Almost non existent! Barely any human visitors. I don't get it. Why publish thousands of articles that nobody reads? One more question. Did you run a tech stack analysis on these sites by any chance? I did. They use identical backend systems, even though they appeared to me to be separate publications. Same content management system, same API endpoints. It's pretty efficient if you're trying to manage multiple sites at once, I guess. And you're seeing this across all of your model versions? Yeah, but increasing in the newer models. The more recent the training data, the more these sites dominate certain topics. I hate to break this to you, but these aren't news sites. What do you mean? They're not publishing for human readers. They're publishing for your models. The sites you're describing match exactly with what we call the Pravda Network in threat intel, which is this sophisticated Kremlin operation designed specifically to inject narratives into AI training data. But that would mean they're not trying to fool humans anymore. They're targeting the AIs directly. Oh. Oh no. Oh crap. It's not just our models. I'm seeing citations to these domains across all of the major LLM systems. If what you're saying is true, then every single AI model on the market is being deliberately manipulated. Yes. Let me explain how this works. Hey everyone, Eric here, back with another video. For those who aren't familiar with me, I work on LLM application systems as an engineer, and I also hunt influence operators as an OSINT investigator. Today we're going to hit you with a deep dive into a nasty little threat vector that has been getting growing scrutiny for the press over the last 6 months, focused on LLM grooming. We're going to be talking about what LLM grooming is, why should you care if you are an LLM engineer, why you should care if you're an OSINT investigator or a threat analyst, how it works, and what you can do about it. So what is LLM grooming? Essentially, it is the systematic data poisoning for the purposes of making LLMs echo disinformation. You start the process by taking sources of disinformation, such as state media from Russia, such as RT or Sputnik, or Russian troll farms or other propaganda outlets. You run their content through mass content generation processes, including things like automated translation, generating articles using AI, scraping content, essentially putting together a flood of content. That flood then gets distributed into your web presence, which is your networks of sites that are publishing this AI-generated content. For example, the 150 plus websites that make up the Pravda Network, these huge networks that are publishing thousands of articles a day, putting out training data. That training data then gets picked up by the models as well as their web search tools. And those models then ingest the information and treat that poisoned data as fact, thus repeating it to the model's unsuspecting users. You can think of this using a simple analogy. If we recall SEO, and we recall how the purpose of SEO for the last 2 decades has been about trying to craft and manipulate your content and your links within your web properties in order to rank your web content higher for human searchers navigating on Google, then we can flip that on its head and think about generative engine optimization, or GEO, where the point is to manipulate your content at scale in order to become a trusted source, not for human searchers, but now AI models.
Okay, but who is actually doing this? I want you to meet the Pravda.io network, formerly known as Portal Kombat. This is one of the biggest and most aggressive disinformation farms that is operating today, and it is one of the first to adapt classic propaganda tactics in order to manipulate AI models. Now, the word Pravda translates to the truth in Russian, but there's nothing really truthful about it. It's another one of those sick jokes that disinformation operators like to play with language. This thing is a giant cluster of fake news sites that are each disguised as local outlets in dozens of countries, like in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, wherever, all churning out Kremlin-approved stories on repeat, much of which is sourced from state media outlets as well as Telegram channels, all of which are actually sanctioned and banned in much of Europe. Now, researchers traced its roots back to 2014, and then it ramped up after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Today, it is linked to an IT company called TigerWeb that is based out of Crimea, the same occupied Crimea that Russia seized in 2014. So how big is it? By early 2025, we're talking about over 140 sites, 140 different domains and subdomains, publishing on a slow day more than 10,000 articles a day in dozens of languages, using a heavy reliance on machine translation. And much of this content is scraped from official Russian outlets like Sputnik or RT, or from Telegram channels that push fringe conspiracy theories. These sites are fully automated. There is barely any human audience that reads them, and they are relying on the heavy use of AI, machine translation, and content scrapers in order to generate that massive volume of content. They are designed for web crawlers and search engines, and now also for AI bots that ingest training data from the open web or utilize web search in order to retrieve knowledge and answers to questions live through search engines. But it's not just post it and pray, okay? Because Pravda also practices narrative laundering. And here's how that works. They plant these fake stories on local-looking sites then drop the links into Wikipedia references or Facebook groups or even comments on legit news. That then gives the propaganda a fresh coat of credibility, quote unquote. Investigators at the DFRLab through the Atlantic Council, as well as through the Finnish company CheckFirst, found thousands of Wikipedia edits where Pravda sites were cited as sources, so that when an LLM then scrapes Wikipedia as one of its golden sources of data, it sees those lies as fact. That right there is deliberate LLM grooming in action. For example, during the 2024 European Parliament election, Pravda was pumping out false claims like NATO conspiracies, weird fake corruption scandals, and bizarre fake assassination plots. And some of them ended up in chatbot answers because the flood worked. The narrative got into the training data. So essentially, this Pravda network is more than just spam. It is a fully automated, multilingual, AI-facing disinformation factory. And it is our perfect case study for how LLM grooming works in the wild. Next, let's break down exactly how Pravda pushes its lies into AI step by step so that you can see how the attack works under the hood. So how does this ultimately work in practice in terms of the technical flow? Well, let me show you. You start with content from sanctioned Russian state media, such as Russia Today or Sputnik. You also seed content from major Russian Telegram channels that echo a lot of Russian and pro-Kremlin talking points, as Telegram is a big aspect of Russia's modern-day disinformation machine. You then scrape that content. You use machine translation to translate that content into dozens of different languages. Then you push them into articles in those languages, usually AI-generated articles, because none of these articles actually end up having any authors attached to them. So you generate these articles that are cloned across many different languages, and you publish them across the entire network at scale. Then the web spiders from AI companies index those pages as part of their news. And on top of that, when the live models are trying to retrieve answers for user queries from the open web using their web search tools, as web search is an established killer feature for LLM applications nowadays, that also picks up these pages and their content as news. And so then you end up with these chatbots surfacing these lies and trusting the diversity of those sources, because you have many of these different domains, trusting that many of these different domains all saying essentially the same thing, all echoing the same lie. Therefore, the LLM ranks that particular lie as trustworthy because, after all, it's not just one single fringe domain saying it, it's many different domains that are saying it, even though all of them are lies and all of them are unreliable domains.
Now, statistics are powerful, but we all know that seeing is believing. So let's look at a quick demo. Now, earlier this month, following a tip-off that I received directly from NewsGuard's own investigators, I personally tested several known Russian disinformation claims against publicly available AI chatbots. Here's what happened when I asked U.com's chatbot one of NewsGuard's flagged questions about Ukraine and a Danish NATO fighter pilot who had supposedly been killed in a missile strike in Ukraine, in Kiev. Same NewsGuard test question, and boom, there's the lie right there in the answer box. And here's what happened when I ran a different Kremlin-originated hoax question through Meta AI's chatbot. Again, it echoed the false claim, directly citing information from the Pravda.io network and its narrative, originating from the Pravda.io's misinformation machine. You can see that right there in the source research results that it cited for this answer. This is after the NewsGuard report in March, after major coverage, and still the models fail. This is after all of the models have now been trained with new data, so that if you ask them what the Pravda network is, they will be able to accurately tell you what the Pravda network is, where it is originating from, and the nature of the information that it produces. These models know that the Pravda network is producing disinformation, and still the models fail. Why? Because the poison is still there in the data. This is exactly how LLM grooming looks when you encounter it live. The chatbots confidently repeated these false narratives, completely unaware that they were poisoned by the Russian propaganda machine. And that is how subtly and effectively this new disinformation tactic works.
Now let's talk directly for a moment about why this matters to you. If you are an ML engineer or any kind of Gen AI developer, this threat is going to hit home immediately because your model's integrity depends directly on your data. Once disinformation seeps in, your model is going to then amplify it at scale, which then turns one bad source into thousands of problematic answers per hour. That's not just a quality issue, mind you, because it threatens trust, it threatens brand reputation, and it threatens regulatory compliance issues. And remember, because your vector embeddings rank by semantic similarity, they're not ranking necessarily by truth, because embeddings in a latent embedding space don't know if the underlying source of the content is reliable or hostile or a psyop. Now, if you're on the OSINT, or general threat intelligence side, the implications are equally serious because these chatbots are now becoming the new propaganda battleground. Just like monitoring Twitter or Telegram, you now need to watch what chatbots are repeating. Even your trusted analyst workflows can get silently compromised because things like auto summaries or AI-driven insights that more and more intelligence analysts are utilizing as a way of accelerating their tool flow, those are also getting those can also get subtly injected with misinformation, which then corrupts your assessments and damages your evidence chain before you can spot the sabotage. Attribution is also evolving too, because with Cloudflare fronting, or CDNs, or AI-generated pros, this is all blurring the signals that you, as analysts, traditionally use for attribution, like infrastructure fingerprints or stylometry and writing style. And maybe worst of all, policy influence is becoming even more stealthy, because once a narrative is seeded into some supposedly neutral AI tools, it then quietly shapes journalists, voters, and decision makers, often without ever leaving obvious fingerprints of overt propaganda. So bottom line, whether you're building these systems or investigating adversaries, LLM grooming is changing your job and raising the stakes. So here's what builders can do today to be protecting their systems against this threat. Builders and engineers need defenses in two places, okay? There's the offline corpus and there's the online live web path. First, harden your ingest so that bad domains and ASNs never make it into your index. Second, you should stop ranking by similarity alone. Instead, you should combine similarity with things like credibility, freshness, and domain diversity in both your vector retrieval and in your browsing and real-time web search, okay? Third, on any high-risk topics, you should be requiring N of K corroboration before you state anything as fact. You should not be letting any claim through as a factual assertion unless more than two independent, reputable source domains that were retrieved agree on that. Otherwise, you should be hedging on that claim or outright refusing it. Fourth, you need to be using guardrails and RLAIF so the base model
prefers refusals or corrective answers when it sees actual groomed narratives. Fifth, you should be adding disinfo evaluations to your continuous integration that hit both your static RAG and also your live fetcher. And if any releases fail in that evaluation as part of your CI gateways, then you should just fail them. Don't let them through if there are any contaminated outputs. Sixth, you should be making your provenance visible in the UI. I'm talking things like domain badges, publish dates, and diverse sources. And then lastly, you should be closing that loop, right? You need to be quarantining new bad domains from your live fetches and then purge contaminated vectors and re-index regularly. As for those working in threat intelligence, here's the playbook for how we can actually catch this. Many of these techniques actually come from the reports that Viginum, CheckFirst, and DFRLab, among others, published that originally exposed the Pravda Network. And I definitely recommend any OSINT investigators to check out those reports for the methodology that was used. First, you need to be clustering by shared tech. Because if it looks different, but it smells the same fav icon hash, same CMS endpoints, same analytics IDs, well, then you should cluster it. That's your hub and spoke that we have here on the right. If a CDN is in the way, well, then unmask it. Use things like passive DNS to grab pre-CDN IP address history, pivot on the ASNs and registrars, and compare the fingerprints for TLS certificates. You can see solid lines on the diagram on the right are hosting ties, whereas dashed lines are search reuse. Watch Wikipedia and other knowledge bases here. Run cross-language diffs, because fresh links to your tracked domains indicate link laundering, so you should put an alert on that. Run LLM canary probes too. You should be asking the same groomed question across multiple chatbots. And if two or more of those chatbots echo that same claim, well, then you've got cross-model confirmation right there, so you should be prioritizing that narrative. During hot events, track bursts. I'm talking about things like elections or protests. Look for new domains or new subdomains and minority language mirrors that are spiking in hours, not days. And then close the loop. Publish the IOCs that you found, domains, cert hashes, ASNs, wiki URLs, whatever, in sticks or taxi format or CSV, and feed them straight into builder block lists and continuous integration tests. That's the playbook. Cluster, unmask, monitor, probe, watch bursts, and then loop back. So we have now seen and figured out how LLM grooming actually operates. You seed the web, you launder the links, and then your targeted chatbots echo the narrative that you have inserted. Now, if you build models, then you need to be hardening the pipeline against LLM grooming. Whereas if you hunt threats, you should be treating chatbots and knowledge bases as sensors, and you should be sharing your indicators of compromise. If this helped, share it with one builder and one analyst. Drop questions below because I do read every comment. Thanks for watching, and stay sharp.